I want to finish something off with kind of what was a hot topic, I will say, out of the game on Saturday night between UCLA and USC, although it didn't have to do with UCLA or USC. In fact, it was something that I brought up. But I will just tell you this. Think of the wild day that we had in college football. I mean, I already touched on Michigan and Ohio State, and the struggle that they were having to win those games against Illinois and Maryland. But it was all over. TCU's running their field goal team out with no timeouts and kicking a field goal in order to win at Baylor. Tennessee gets absolutely stomped. 63 put on them. I mean, this is a team that all they had to do was win out, and they were likely in the college football playoff. And that performance was head-scratching, to say the least. North Carolina goes down. They were a one-loss team. Georgia was in a 10-point game with Kentucky. Ole Miss goes down. It was a wild day. It was a wild day. And every one of those teams, every one of them, regardless of conference that they played in, do you think that they would have rather sat around and feasted on delicious, maybe moist cupcakes? Yep.
LSU leads UAB.
Which is
must be nice to be able to play UAB late in November. Give me a break. What a joke. Austin Peay for the Alabama Crimson Tide. You think Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU, they would rather play Austin Peay than having to go on the road or play league opponents? Of course they would.
Don't look at me. What are we doing? I'm not saying anything.
So that obviously lit up Twitter, and everybody thought it was just like a massive shot at the SEC. No, it's not. I am against any conference, any team scheduling in a way in which gives them a massive cupcake late in November. Why is that, Joel? Well, because it gives them a massive advantage in college football. That's not good for the sport. That's gaming the system. It's gaming the system. And by the way, I never said, hey, it's just that they played them, period. I said in November. It's just one of those things. Like, you think Hendon Hooker would still be healthy if they were playing Austin Peay? Probably. You think that Ohio State with their injury issues. By the way, TCU was banged up, and Duggan is putting on a great performance to beat Baylor. Michigan's all banged up, trying to just scratch out a win against Illinois. Why is that? Because it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to go through a gauntlet of games week after week after week in any conference and play at a conference standard, a winning conference standard every single week. That's hard to do. And those other teams know it, and they know it so well that they avoid it. That's not good for the sport. It's just not. All right? You want to play them? Fine. You know what? Fine. Go play them in September. Go play them in September, because we should all be at least in some semblance playing the same structure of schedule. Now, you can yell and scream all you want to, like, well, the SEC schedule is just tougher. Okay. But if it's just tougher all around, then isn't it the same between the margin of teams as playing in any other conference? See, because I would actually argue that the middle of the SEC is further from the top of the SEC than the middle of the Pac-12 is from the top of the Pac-12. I would argue that the middle of the SEC is further from the top of the SEC than the middle of the ACC is from the top of the ACC. Same in the Big 12. The only argument that maybe you can get into, in particular this year, is that the middle of the Big 10 is probably just as far from the top end of the Big 10 than middle top end of the SEC. There's really three reasons why this is such a massive benefit to these teams. Three reasons. And I know that they're obvious, but I just want to talk through them a little bit. And again, this is not a conference argument. This is a schedule structure argument. Everybody in college football, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia, you should all be shouting from the rooftops about this, because it's not good for the sport. It's just not. When you all of a sudden gain an advantage in the three areas that I'm going to talk about, one, huge advantage as it relates to health. that is as obvious as the day is long, okay? And I know the days are getting shorter, so whatever. It's just really obvious. You get what I'm trying to say. Number 2 is the difficulty of holding a standard of performance. Any of us know, and you inherently know this, it's really tough to be at our best or our capacity all the time or frequently. Okay? If any of us are ever, like if you're working out and you're working hard, like let's say you're on the Peloton, can you PR every day? Of course you can't. Of course you can't. It's not physically possible. It's really hard. Why? Because you get banged up and then you just can't get yourself there. Well, that's the same with a football team. Week after week after week, it's just not going to happen. That's why undefeateds don't happen in the National Football League. They just don't, okay? Why? Because the standard of performance every single week is very difficult. It's tough to get to your peak 4 times in the last month of the season rather than 2 times in the last month of the season. And then the last thing is that it's clearly unfair because we have this subjective nature of college football. We still crown a champion based off subjective metrics. Let me give you an example of that. In November, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter if you only beat Austin Peay 34-0. But if you did that in the first week of the season, we would clearly say, what's wrong with you? Why is that? I don't understand. By the way, isn't it so much better to just win a game in which we push it off to the wayside? You can just win 34-0 and it's just everything is fine and you can get guys healthy. Gibbs doesn't play. There's no strain on your team, right? It's not very difficult versus let's say those guys, let's say Gibbs was out. You want to play South Carolina this week with Jahmyr Gibbs out? Don't you think you'd probably be in a game that was a lot tighter than people expected? And then when you're in a game tighter than people expected, in the subjective nature of our sport, everyone's like, I don't know about them, which is exactly what's going on with some of these other teams. I don't know about Michigan and Ohio State. Are they really that good? Look at what they did against Maryland and Illinois. Oh, but we can just go play Austin Peay and only win 34-0 with the same guys out. And it's totally fine. It's totally fine. The sport in so many ways is broken, and the schedule is one of those. And this bringing this to light, I believe, is important because we need to fix it. We need to play similar styles of schedule and makeup of schedule, and certainly we need to get these cupcakes out of the last month of the season. I think that is bad for the sport, and I will go to my grave with that opinion.